the Jesus you've been praying to your whole life, is not the full picture. That's not an attack on your faith. That's the opening line of the book of Revelation. Most believers carry a version of Christ shaped entirely by the four Gospels: gentle, patient, walking through dust, healing the broken. And that version is real, deeply real, but Revelation tears open another door. One that most Christians quietly tiptoe around, because what's standing on the other side doesn't fit the image they've protected for years. The Christians who have actually sat with these chapters long enough to let them sink in, they come out different, changed, sometimes undone. Because you cannot encounter the full Jesus of Revelation and remain the same size you were before. Here's what no one wants to say out loud. The version of Christ most believers carry is too small. Not wrong, too small. And that gap between who you think he is and who the book of Revelation reveals him to be, that gap might be the most significant spiritual blind spot in your life right now. Because the day is coming when every eye will see him, and the only question is whether that moment is a reunion or a reckoning. Let's go to the text, not the comfortable parts. Revelation chapter 1, verses 12 through 16. John, the beloved disciple, the man who rested his head on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper, the one who stood at the foot of the cross when everyone else had run. John turns around on the island of Patmos and sees him. And John falls down like a dead man. Why? Because the Jesus standing before him had eyes like blazing fire, a voice like the sound of rushing waters that shakes the ground under your feet, a face like the sun shining at full strength, not warm and gentle but blinding. In his right hand 7 stars, out of his mouth a sharp double-edged sword, his feet glowing like bronze poured out of a furnace. This is the same man who said, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest." The same one who wept at Lazarus' tomb, the same one who let children climb into his lap without anyone stopping them. The difference isn't that Jesus changed between the Gospels and Revelation. The difference is that John finally saw all of him. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever known someone really believed you knew them, and then one day, in a completely different setting, you realized you had only seen one dimension of who they were, one angle, one context, and suddenly everything expanded? Revelation does that, but on an infinite scale. Here's what most end times content misses entirely. The chaos of Revelation, the seals, the trumpets, the plagues, is not the subject of the book. The chaos is the backdrop. The subject is announced in the very first sentence. Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, not the revelation of end times events, not the revelation of the Antichrist, Jesus. The whole book is a portrait, and most believers have spent their entire Christian lives staring at the frame. Now here's the shift. This is where everything changes. In the 4 Gospels, Jesus veils his glory. Not completely. You see flashes of it at the Transfiguration, brilliant white light breaking through. You see it in the resurrection, when Mary doesn't recognize him at first. But largely, he moves through the world contained, accessible. The incarnation was God choosing limitation so that broken human beings could approach him without being consumed. In Revelation, the veil is gone. And what stands behind it is not a different being. It is the full magnitude of who he always was. The Lamb who was slain is the same as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. The one who washed his disciples' feet in an upper room is the one on whose robe and thigh it is written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Revelation 19:16. Not a metaphor, not a title given to comfort you, a declaration written in permanent ink on the garment of the returning King. These are not 2 different Christs. This is one person fully seen. But this is where Revelation becomes personally uncomfortable, and it should. If you have only known the servant Jesus, the approachable, gentle, culturally palatable Jesus, Have you built your faith on something real or on something manageable? Because the Jesus of Revelation is not manageable. He cannot be reduced to a coping mechanism. He cannot be pulled out only on hard days and put back in a drawer when life is comfortable. He is a king, returning in power, with the armies of heaven riding behind him. And every knee will bow, not because they're forced to in fear, but because in that moment, every created thing will finally see what was always true. His second coming is not a surprise ending to a story that was otherwise going well. It is the climax the entire story was always moving toward. The question isn't whether that moment is coming. The question is, are you living now in a way that makes that moment a reunion, or something far more sobering? John, the closest person to Jesus in all of human history, the one who knew his voice better than anyone, he collapses at his feet. If the most intimate companion Jesus ever had on earth was completely undone by the full sight of him, what does that say about how small our current picture still is? And this is the revelation inside the revelation, something extraordinary happens in verse 17. Jesus reaches down, lays his right hand on John, and says, "Do not be afraid, I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever." The King who commands heaven's armies also tenderly lifts the man who collapsed at his feet. The same fire in his eyes is the fire of his love. The same sword from his mouth is the word that saved you. The same glory that blinded John is the glory that one day, not as something to survive, but as something to share, will be yours. 2 Corinthians 3:18 tells us that as we behold his glory, we are transformed into that same image, from one degree of glory to the next. The book of Revelation was not written to terrify you into spiritual preparation. It was written to transform you through the vision of who he actually is. Because here's the truth about spiritual readiness that end times culture consistently gets backwards. It's not about understanding timelines. It's not about identifying signs. Those things matter, but a church that can map every seal and trumpet while carrying a domesticated image of Christ is a church that is not prepared. A church that has seen the full Christ, the Lamb and the Lion, the servant and the King, the wounded and the triumphant, that church is unshakable. Because what anchors you in the storm is not your knowledge of events. It is your knowledge of the one who holds all events in his hands. And he does. In Revelation 1, he holds 7 stars in his right hand. Stars, in Scripture, represent his authority over every spiritual reality. The same hand that reaches down to lift John off the ground holds the entire order of creation. When the one who holds the cosmos also holds your name, fear becomes something entirely different. There's one more image in Revelation that deserves to sit with you. Chapter 5. John is watching a scene in heaven, and no one is found worthy to open the scroll that contains the destiny of all things. No one, not an angel, not a patriarch, not a prophet, and John begins to weep. Then an elder speaks, "Do not weep. The Lion of the tribe of Judah has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll." John turns to see the lion. And what he sees is a lamb standing in the center of the throne, as if it had been slain. The lion and the lamb are the same. The power and the sacrifice are the same. The sovereignty and the wounds are the same. That tension, that impossible, glorious tension, is who Jesus is, not one or the other, both fully. And until you have sat long enough with the book of Revelation to let that sink beneath your theology into your bones, you have not yet seen the complete face of the one you call Lord. That is the invitation the book makes, not to fear what's coming, but to know who is coming. And knowing him changes everything about how you live today. If this biblical teaching on Jesus revealed in the book of Revelation helped you see something new, share it with someone whose faith needs to be stretched. Subscribe for more prophetic scripture study that prepares you spiritually for the days ahead.